What is up, investors, and welcome back to the Everything Crypto Show, where we bring you the latest and most important news moving the crypto markets every single day. Now, we are back today with the weekly CRO update, and there is plenty of stuff to get through, including the Cronos chain undergoing its first major upgrade since moving out of beta. Then we have Crypto.com reaching another record user milestone, and last but not least, we're going to walk you guys through some on-chain data to show you the growth for both the Crypto.org and the Cronos chain. So without further ado, it is time to sit back, relax, grab that morning cup of joe, and enjoy the show. Happy Sunday, everyone. I am wishing you all a peaceful and restful day ahead. I just wanted to ask that if you've not yet hit that sub, like, and notification bell, please consider doing so and joining the Everything Crypto squad, and I love and appreciate you all. Now, as for today's question of the day, I want to know, do you think CRO will hit 10 cents again in 2023? Let me know in the YouTube comments down below. And the reason we're asking this question is because if you guys have been with the channel for a while, you know that we have identified that 5.5 cent range as a very solid level of support for CRO, in which it has made two separate moves of about 25%, and more recently a nice move of over 30%. And with that, we're going to hop right into the charts here and show you guys exactly what I am talking about. So it starts off kind of here back in June when crypto did make its first bottom there, when CRO did find a lot of support at that 10 cent level. This was the first level that we did talk about being a very good swing trading price for CRO, and the first time this actually made for a very good swing opportunity was from 10 cents all the way up to 15 cents, making for a swing of about 50%. And then again here in September, it made for a nice swing of 10 cents back up to about 12.5 cents, so a nice move of 25%. And then one more time here back in mid-October, it made for yet another pretty good swing of about 20% back up to that 12-cent level. So you can see here that 10 cents did act as a very good springboard for CRO in terms of the price action. And then came November, where we did actually see a lot of the bank run FUD. We saw a lot of withdrawals from the Crypto.com platform. And based on the fact that people thought Crypto.com was going bankrupt, which obviously has now been proven to be false, there was a ton of selling pressure. And this is when CRO did actually drop below the 10 cent level. And the next level that we had identified here for CRO did sit at 5.5 cents, which once again it did prove to act as a very strong level of support. And the reason we were pretty confident in that 5.5 cent level is if we actually take a look back here, where was it? It was back here in 2021. You guys are going to notice that 5.5 cents did act as a very strong level of support in late 2020 moving into early 2021. And after we did bounce off that level for the last time, CRO then proceeded to rally here about 395% up to about the 27 cent level mark. So 5.5 cents did prove to be a very strong level for CRO back there in late 2020, early 2021, and therefore I did suspect that we would see some buyers step in there again, which we did. Now, off of that 5.5 cent level, these are the two trading opportunities we did talk about for CRO. The first one here is from 5.5 cents up to about 7.5 cents, making for a nice swing of 36%. And then more recently here, at the end of 2022, actually December 31st, we saw CRO once again hit 5.5 cents, and since then, from the peak there at about 8.5 cents, it was up 56% at that highest point. Now, currently, it is testing the 100-day moving average as a level of resistance, and in the coming weeks and months, I would expect CRO to make a run back up to that 10 cent level. Reason being, once again, is because 10 cents did previously act as a very strong level of support. I do suspect that it will act as a magnet for the price action and now act as a strong level of resistance, effectively meaning that had you picked up some CRO at that 5.5 cent level and are willing to swing it all the way up to 10 cents, that will make for a nice swing trade of about 85%. Also, do keep in mind that the 200-day moving average sits at 10 cents as well. And if I was trading CRO here, and if you are trading CRO at this level, this is where I would potentially start taking some profits. So far, 2023 has been a very good year for CRO and the broader crypto markets. Now, from the bottom here in 2023, which is again at that 5.5 cent level, CRO is currently up about 41%, and at its peak of the move, it was up over 53% on a year-to-date basis. So currently, CRO's performance is actually just about in line with Bitcoin, give or take a couple of percent. And we have not just seen growth in terms of CRO coin itself, we have seen a lot of growth in terms of Crypto.com, as they did set a new record user milestone, and we have also seen some serious upgrades to the Cronos chain, and that's exactly what we are going to discuss next here, as the Cronos mainnet network upgrade Galileo did go live as of January 18th earlier this week, With this version 1.0 having been released, it confirms that the Cronos chain is well out of beta, having processed more than 65 million transactions for more than 1 million users. And the major improvements introduced in Cronos version 1.0, there's 4 of them, but there's really 2 here that I think are very important to discuss. And the first one here is mempool prioritization to scale TPS even further. So what this actually does is enables mempool prioritization, sorting Ethereum and Cosmos transactions according to EIP 1559. From the standpoint of Cronos end users and dApp developers, the priority fee is set in the same way as on the Ethereum mainnet, and the mempool implementation of Cronos v1.0 enables setting a priority fee for each transaction. The highest priority transactions will then be prioritized by block proposers. The priority level is determined according to the effective priority fee calculated by the EIP 1559 fee market. And what this basically means is that in terms of transactions, you now have further customization options when it comes to your fees and gas prices. For those of you that don't know, on Ethereum, if you are doing a transaction, you can actually specify if you would like this transaction to be slow, medium, or fast. And if you want it to be fast, what you are basically going to do is pay a higher gas fee, but have your transaction prioritized via this mempool prioritization. So now Cronos is implementing the exact same thing on their blockchain, allowing you to pretty much identify if you would not mind your transaction going through slower for a cheaper gas fee, or if for some reason you want this transaction to go through faster, you can have it pushed up in sort of like the order of transactions by simply paying a higher gas fee, and then the EIP 1559 fee market will put your transaction ahead of all the other ones that do want to go through at a medium or slow pace. So that is how this new upgrade works. Once again, just working on continuing to scale the transactions per second of the network. Now the other one here is the actual optimized node storage, reducing it by 30% for full nodes. So you can see here the 2 main things they were sort of focusing on was transactions per second and the actual optimization of storage, both of which are going to be important for this blockchain as it does continue to scale. Obviously, they want to make sure, going under the assumption that the Cronos chain is going to continue growing, which of course anybody on the Cronos team does want to happen. They do need to be prepared for this sort of like inflow of transactions of new users, and therefore they are taking seriously both the scalability and the storage of this blockchain. And this is only phase 1 of optimizations for the Cronos protocol and database, while they continue to further invest in the R&D work streams required for phase 2. And phase 2 does involve Cronos rollups as well as Cronos Next Level, both of which are highlighted in more detail in the roadmap. So for Cronos rollups, this is the first initiative of the deployment of rollup technology to the Cronos ecosystem, and several open source options are already available, among those being used in the Ethereum ecosystem. In the short to midterm, we expect that these options will be most relevant for application-specific use cases that require heavy throughput, such as high-profile games, according to the Cronos team here. And we know that GameFi has been a very big aspect of focus for them. GameFi is one area of the blockchain that I personally am very bullish on, and Cronos is in fact interoperable with the 2 best gaming engines in the industry in the form of both the Unity and Unreal Engine. So what it sounds like to me is they are going to be tapping into rollups here, expecting some very high profile games to make their way onto the Cronos chain, and that rollups will be needed to ensure the smoothness and efficiency of transactions on the network. Some of these rollups that are already available on Ethereum do include both Optimism and Arbitrum, and effectively what they do is roll up a bunch of transactions to actually go ahead and help with blockchain optimization and storage on the network. Now the other one here is Cronos Next Level. And they say here this is an R&D project that will explore novel approaches for high throughput without compromising on application composability, meaning it will not be restricted to application-specific use cases. The approach is to push Cronos technology to its limits by addressing the bottlenecks inherent to the Ethereum virtual machine, once again being the speed of execution or transactions per second and the speed of storage input/output. The design of Cronos Next Level is still at an early stage and relies on 2 work streams: the parallelization of smart contract execution and the modularization of storage. Now, the last thing they talk about here in the version 1.0 update, as well as here in the roadmap, is interoperability and inter-blockchain communication. This is something we have discussed frequently on the channel, as I believe that the future of the blockchain is interoperable, okay? It does not make sense. I don't think that it's going to be very efficient for all of these institutions, all these businesses, to run on one single blockchain. I think that the future of crypto and of blockchain blockchain technology is multi-blockchain, and in that case, we do need interoperability to allow all of these different chains to communicate with each other, and that is why Cronos is also mindful of this, and they have been working on their Cronos Gravity Bridge. Now, we've been covering the Cronos Gravity Bridge since last year. It is currently still in beta. And the one thing to know when it comes to bridges is they have definitely been a very popular in terms of hackers. A lot of these hacks that did occur last year were through bridges. It would appear there is inherently some sort of security weakness between bridges. In fact, Vitalik Buterin himself did discuss how bridges are not really meant to be used in crypto, right? Like if something was made on a blockchain, it was meant to stay on this blockchain, and there's going to be some sort of weakness within these bridges that hackers are able to take advantage of as you are transferring your crypto assets between different chains. I believe that is why the Cronos Gravity Bridge has been in beta for quite a while, as obviously if they were to release this bridge and then it got hacked right away, that would not be a very good look there on the Cronos chain as a whole. It would not make people very confident in actually transferring assets to the Cronos chain, and that is what the Cronos chain wants. They want people to move assets onto Cronos, as it pretty much opens up the option for a bunch of total value lock to make its way over to Cronos. So for example, you can see here that what you can actually do is select Ethereum and then bridge any ERC20 token from Ethereum over to Cronos. So for example, I can go ahead and take an ERC20 token like Quant or like Chainlink and then have it basically locked up on the ERC20 side. I will then have a new CRC20 version minted on the Cronos side, and then you can actually effectively use a token like Quant on the Cronos chain to interact with different decentralized applications. And then if you want to go ahead and send it from the Cronos chain back to its original blockchain, all you would have to do is then go ahead and have the CRC20 equivalent burned, and the unlocked ERC20 token would be given back to your wallet on the Ethereum blockchain. So really promoting that interoperability between Cronos and other blockchains. And for some perspective here, I mean, ETH is coming in with a TVL of 44.71 billion, while Cronos comes in at just 410 million. So you can see why it is definitely very incentivizing to potentially get some ERC20 tokens moved over into CRC20 tokens, potentially opening up like billions of dollars worth of TVL to the Cronos chain. Obviously, assuming that there are some decentralized applications that do make the incentive very strong for people to actually move over to this blockchain. So that's about it when it does come to the Cronos upgrades that we saw this previous week. And now we're going to hop in here to some news that Crypto.com is purchasing technological carbon removals to advance their sustainability efforts. This is an 8-year carbon removal agreement with Climeworks to neutralize their direct carbon emissions. And the key word here is that they did actually engage with several carbon removal providers and policymakers, as well as their own commercial partners such as Shopify. Now, personally, you may not care too much about Crypto.com's environmental impact, but the matter of fact is a lot of institutions do care about environmental impact, carbon emissions, and ESG scores. That has been one of these like emerging themes in terms of institutional investments, is in fact how are these companies operating in terms of their carbon emissions. And you can also see that here based on other projects, like for Ethereum. When they talk about the merge, they talk about how they pretty much reduce the energy consumption of this network by 99.95%. Polygon announced reaching their first sustainability milestone by achieving network carbon neutrality, and that is because a lot of institutions are looking for ESG-friendly blockchains, for ESG-friendly businesses as a whole. So while you personally may not care too much about Crypto.com's carbon emissions, the matter of fact is that institutions do. And we know that Crypto.com has been focused on the institutional side of things here, as they should, right? Because that is where majority of the big money flows are going to come from. We know that last March, Crypto.com began their exchange rollout in the US to select institutional investors. And since then, we have not actually had any updates regarding the exchange. I think a lot of that has to do with the regulatory unclarity in the US. But the matter of fact is, based on this news, we know that Crypto.com is interested in getting institutions involved on their platforms. And we know that these platforms do offer some juicy incentives for actually holding CRO. So therefore, getting institutions involved in the Crypto.com ecosystem could have some upwards price action on CRO. And that's why, if this is what they need to do to attract that big money interest, then that is definitely a good move for the company as a whole. So while it may seem like insignificant news for your average investor, this is targeting, in my opinion, the bigger investors, and that is what we want to actually see some more substantial money flow into Crypto.com and hopefully CRO coin in the long run. Now, speaking of institutions and regulation, we saw Binance move forward with local development and regulatory compliance in Poland. So they are now completely compliant with local regulatory standards for their virtual asset service providers here in Poland. Polish residents that are registered with Binance are being asked to sign a new terms and conditions, and the company has announced plans to ramp up local talent acquisition, events, and educational initiatives in this region. So Binance is now targeting a lot of regulatory approval throughout this bear market, making sure they are ready to sort of capture a lot of user growth in the next bull run. And this is something we have discussed often in relation to Crypto.com and their business strategy. We've talked about how Crypto.com has acquired regulatory approval in France, Singapore, the UK, Dubai, Italy, Greece, Cyprus, South Korea, as well as a pre-registration undertaking with the Ontario Securities Administration in Canada. We actually know that Binance was kicked out of operating in Ontario as of 2021 because they were operating in Ontario without the proper pre-registration undertaking in place. And Crypto.com is in fact the first global crypto service provider that does have this pre-registration undertaking. All of the other exchanges that are currently operating in Ontario are Canadian owned. Crypto.com is the only global one at the moment, as outlined on the Ontario Securities Commission's website. So very bullish there for Binance in terms of getting that regulatory approval. And we have been covering Binance more recently, even in our CROcoin updates, because one thing we kind of talk about here on the channel quite a bit is the actual connection between the growth of Crypto.com and the growth of CROcoin, being that CROcoin is the native token of the Crypto.com platform, amongst other things like the Crypto.org and the Cronos chain. But it does stand to reason that if Crypto.com does see a sort of like an inflow of customers, and if they do incentivize these customers to own CRO for some in-app benefits, then there is somewhat of a correlation between the growth of Crypto.com as well as CROcoin, and the same thing does go for Binance and BNB. Now, as you can see at the moment, Binance has a substantial lead over the rest of the competition with $67.13 billion worth of customer assets, and in second place we have Bitfinex with $8.07 billion, in third place OKX with $7.69 billion, and in fourth place the Crypto.com main exchange here with $3.8 billion worth of customer assets. So the matter of fact is, Binance has a very substantial lead over Crypto.com here of about $64 billion worth of assets. And the thing here is, like, we know Binance has a big lead over Crypto.com, which is why we do keep our eye on Binance as well as the number one player in the centralized exchange space. But the big thing that we are also looking at here in terms of Crypto.com is their growth trajectory and the belief that Crypto.com can work their way up to becoming a top 3 exchange, and therefore sort of seeing more money hypothetically flow into CROcoin as well. Now, I do want to kind of keep track of how the growth has been for both these exchanges over the past couple of months. And what you guys are going to notice here is that as of November 11th, Binance had $67.94 billion in customer assets. That is now slightly down to $67.13 billion in customer assets. So just a very slight change here to the downside in terms of the customer assets on Binance. Whereas for Crypto.com on November 11th, they had $1.43 billion in customer assets. That is now up to $3.8 billion. So while we have seen slight outflows for Binance, really not a big deal at all, we have actually seen about a 150% increase here for the TVL and the Crypto.com platform. So while Binance does have a lot more assets than Crypto.com, the matter of fact is Crypto.com's growth trajectory over the past couple of months has been very impressive in my opinion, especially in a period of time where centralized exchange trust has been effectively at all-time lows, which is definitely warranted given the collapse of FTX, Celsius, Voyager. So the fact that Crypto.com is able to continue growing their customer assets at this rate at a time when centralized exchange sentiment is very low is definitely impressive for this exchange in my opinion. Now, not to mention the fact here that if I should take a look at the clean assets on this platform, pretty much which talks about the TVL on the centralized exchange, excluding their very own natively issued token. So in the case of Binance, they have $67.13 billion in customer assets, but only $53.94 billion of that is clean, implying that about $13 billion of these assets are in their very own native BNB token. Whereas for Crypto.com, they have $3.8 billion in customer assets, and and 3.63 billion of that is in CRO. So Crypto.com's assets to clean asset ratio is actually better than Binance's. But once again, Binance does have a substantial lead in terms of customer TVL, but Crypto.com has definitely seen a very impressive growth trajectory, in my opinion, throughout this bear market. And I'd be curious to see what this does look like back in a bull market when more and more people are signing up for accounts. And Crypto.com does continue to sort of be one of the industry leaders in terms of that security, privacy, and regulation. Now we're going to wrap this up here taking a look at the two blockchains that CROcoin is native to, and that is both the Crypto.org as well as the Cronos chain. So as you guys can see here at the moment, there is a total amount of CRO delegated to the Crypto.org chain of 5.311 billion. And if we take a look here at the actual growth of this over the past month, that is up from 5.18 billion. So give or take here, about 150 million CRO being added to the Crypto.org chain over the past month. And if we take a look here at what the actual APY is being offered here for the staking rates, we're going to go to APY and then click this button right here. And you're going to see that the maximum amount of APY being offered here is about 10.85% on a per annum basis. So effectively, you are being paid 10.85% to lock up your CRO via the Crypto.org chain and pretty much contribute your CRO to this network. Now, this, in my opinion, is a very good incentive for locking up your CRO on the network, and it does also very help with the actual price action of CRO. And the reason being here is because you guys may know that if you actually lock up your CRO via the Crypto.org chain and then you want to unstake it, there is a 28-day unbonding period, effectively meaning that if you want to lock up your CRO here for that 10.85% and then you want to unlock it, you're going to have to wait a month, give or take, to get that CRO back in your wallet. And you guys can see here that although there are some declines in terms of the amount of CRO being locked up, that generally speaking, for the most part, it is in an uptrend. And what this indicates to me is that by the time people have unlocked their CRO and undergone a 28-day unbonding period, that it does tend to be more CRO than replacing the CRO that is leaving the pool at the same time. And what this effectively does is means that over long periods of time, assuming that we do continue to see this sort of growth in terms of the amount of CRO being staked, that we are going to see more and more CRO locked up. And this is bullish for the price action of CRO because effectively you can take this 5.3 billion CRO and pretty much remove it from the float. It is not for sale. It is locked up right now, supporting the blockchain. And with a current circulating supply of 25.2 billion, that is equivalent to about 20.5% of the total circulating supply of CRO that is in fact locked up right now and being rewarded this APY. So you can see here the Crypto.org chain has about 1.14 million accounts. And yeah, I mean, it has an inflation rate of 2.44% per year with an APY of 10.85%. The APY is in fact outpacing the inflation rate of this token. So a very good look here from the perspective of the Crypto.org chain. Now, as for the Cronos chain, I want to show you guys this because it actually has kind of dropped out of sitting comfortably in the top 10. It is currently sitting in exactly 10th place. And it's only ahead of Mixin, the blockchain, in 11th place here by about 50 million at this point. So Mixin has a TVL of 361 mil. Cronos has a TVL of 410 mil. And then Phantom is up here in 9th place with 529.7 mil in TVL. Now, in terms of why we have actually seen a decline here in terms of Cronos chain TVL, and it is potentially at risk of dropping out of the top 10. Clearly, if we take a look here at the actual TVL rankings, we can see that Tectonic has seen outflows of 21.95% in the past 1 month alone. And given that this protocol, this lending protocol here, does make up the second most amount of TVL locked on the Cronos chain, this does have a big impact on the overall TVL on Cronos. You can also see that here reflected not in its USD valuation, also in its CRO valuation, which as it did hit a peak here of about 10.5 billion in CRO TVL on the Cronos chain. That is now down to about 5.23%, so about a 50% decline here in the CRO TVL. And then in terms of the actual USD TVL, we're looking at about an 85 to 90% decline. And obviously, given that we are in the middle of a bear market, you do expect declines across the board in that total value locked. Cronos chain generally was kind of hovering in between the 9th to 7th place, and unfortunately it is now down in 10th place. So I mean, I think for Cronos to kind of maintain a top 10 spot, we need to see the Loaded Lions game come out on the Cronos chain, really give people an idea of what Cronos can do in terms of GameFi. And if we do see the Cronos team continue to deliver on what they have outlined in the roadmap, I think the other thing we do need to see here from the Cronos team and actually more specifically from the Crypto.com team, is not only encouraging people to be onboarded to Crypto.com, but also directing them to the Cronos chain through their main app and sort of getting people to move over from the centralized exchange side of things to the decentralized exchange side of things. I think the easiest way to do that is through the DeFi wallet, which already does have a ton of connectivity, kind of making it really easy to transfer assets between the Crypto.com main app and the DeFi wallet respectively. So I think this is what Cronos does need to do to kind of maintain that top 10 position. But the good news here when it comes to Cronos and Crocoin more specifically is that Crocoin is sort of like a multi-purpose token, right? Like it is the native token of the Crypto.com main app. It is also the native token of the Crypto.com exchange. It is the native token of the Crypto.org as well as the Cronos chain. So there are multiple different platforms on both a centralized and decentralized side of things that Crocoin is native to, and that means multiple avenues of growth for this token. So I'm not so concerned about one aspect of Crocoin and its different ecosystems. I'm more so concerned about the overall growth, and between Crypto.com, Crypto.org, and the Cronos chain, I do still see overall Crocoin having a lot of growth potential for the future. So without further ado, I hope you guys did enjoy the content in today's video. You know what to do. If you made it all the way to the end, you are an absolute champion. Let me know in the YouTube comments down below and claim that champion status. I hope you are all having an amazing Sunday, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Peace out for now.